Have you ever wondered how a single act of kindness, something as simple as helping a stranger fix their old Chevy, could change not just one life, but an entire town? This is the story of Caleb Foster, a struggling single dad with grease-stained hands and a heart bigger than he knows. One quiet afternoon, he lends a hand to a woman broken down on the side of the road. Unaware she carries a secret that will upend everything he thought he knew about his town, his future, and even himself. A diner long forgotten, a clock frozen in time, and two people who didn't realize they were exactly what the other needed. Stick around, because by the time the last pancake is flipped and the final note on the jukebox plays, you'll believe that second chances do exist. Before we dive in, if stories about love, community, and the quiet magic of everyday kindness resonate with you, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. It's the best way to join us for more tales just like this, where small towns, big hearts, and a little hope make all the difference. Now, let's begin. A struggling single dad helped a woman fix her Chevy, unaware she owns the town's old diner. Caleb Foster wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag, squinting against the afternoon sun as it glinted off the rusted Foster's Garage sign hanging crooked above him. Another slow day, another quiet hour. Business wasn't what it used to be, not since the big highways rerouted traffic away from their little town. But he'd learned long ago that life, like cars, had a way of breaking down when you least expected, and all you could do was keep fixing. Across the gravel lot, his 10-year-old son Eli darted around, chasing after a paper airplane he'd folded. From an overdue electric bill, Caleb smiled faintly, though his stomach tightened. The bills never stopped coming, but smiles, those were rare treasures these days. The sound of an engine coughing its last breath broke through the stillness. Caleb turned to see an old cherry-red Chevy Impala sputtering toward the garage, barely making it to the front before dying altogether. The driver's door creaked open and out stepped a woman, tall, maybe mid-30s, with wind-blown auburn hair and a guarded expression. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, but there was something about her, something that didn't quite fit the town's worn-out edges. "Afternoon," she called, pushing her sunglasses up. "I think she gave up on me." Caleb walked over, wiping his hands again. "Looks like she's got a bit of character," he said, giving the Chevy an appraising glance. "Pop the hood, I'll take a look." The woman nodded and did as asked, standing quietly to the side while Caleb leaned in. Eli wandered over, curiosity bright in his eyes. "Is that a 64? Eli asked. 65, the woman replied with a small smile. "She belonged to my grandmother," Caleb peeked up. "She took good care of it." "Not so much me," she admitted, glancing away. There was a moment of silence before Caleb stood straight. "Fuel line's loose. Won't take long to fix." She seemed relieved, brushing hair from her face. "Thank you, I'm Marina, by the way. Just passing through." Caleb offered a polite nod. "Caleb, and that's my boy, Eli." Eli grinned and waved. Marina knelt slightly, meeting Eli's gaze. "Nice to meet you, Eli. You helping your dad out?" "He's the best at fixing things," Eli said proudly. Caleb felt his chest tighten again, so much faith in those young eyes. 15 minutes later, with a few expert adjustments and some elbow grease, the Impala purred back to life. Marina looked genuinely impressed. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, reaching into her bag. Caleb shook his head. "Call it a favor. Small towns run on favors." She hesitated, as if not used to people turning down money. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," he replied simply, wiping his hands again. For a moment, Marina seemed like she wanted to say more. Instead, she glanced toward the faded buildings down Main Street. "This town, it feels like it used to be something," she murmured. "It still is," Caleb answered, almost instinctively, though part of him questioned it. just takes the right eyes. Her gaze lingered on the row of shuttered shops, the peeling paint, the quiet stillness. Finally, she smiled faintly, nodding toward the diner across the street, a crumbling building with a flickering neon sign that read Calloway's Diner, letters dim but stubbornly glowing. "My grandmother used to talk about that diner," she said softly. "Said it had the best pancakes in 3 counties. Caleb followed her gaze. "It's been closed a while now. Shame, really. Folks used to line up out the door." Eli tugged at Marina's sleeve, his voice earnest. "Dad says the diner was where everyone in town came together, like family." Marina's smile faltered slightly, something unreadable flickering across her face. "Family," she echoed, almost under her breath. Caleb cleared his throat, suddenly feeling awkward. "If you're hungry, Thompson's Grocery down the block sells decent sandwiches." She shook her head gently. "Thanks, but I should get going." Marina climbed back into her Chevy but paused, resting her hand momentarily on the steering wheel. Her eyes flicked one last time toward the diner before she turned back to Caleb. "Thank you, Caleb," she said quietly, "for fixing things." He gave a nod, tipping his cap. "Drive safe." With a soft rumble, the Impala pulled away, disappearing. Down the empty street, Caleb stood there for a long moment after she was gone, something about the encounter lingering like the scent of rain before a storm. He glanced back at the diner, its windows dusty, the neon letters struggling to hold on. Above the diner's door, through the cracked glass, hung an old wall clock, its hands frozen at 7:15. No one had bothered fixing it for years. Folks stopped, noticing the time when the crowds left, but today Caleb found himself staring at it longer than usual. Maybe, he thought, some things were still worth fixing. The sun dipped low on the horizon as Caleb locked up the garage, the air heavy with the scent of motor oil and dust. Across the lot, Eli skipped stones across the cracked pavement, still brimming with the energy only a 10-year-old could muster. After a long day, "Dad," Eli called, pocketing the last smooth pebble, "can we go look at the diner?" Caleb wiped his hands on his rag, following Eli's gaze toward Calloway's Diner, its neon sign buzzing faintly against the darkening sky. He hesitated, the weight of memories pressing against him. "Not much to see," Caleb said, though there was no conviction behind it. Eli grinned. "I just want to peek inside. You always say that place used to be the heart of town." With a sigh masked as a smile, Caleb gave in. "All right, but just for a minute." They crossed Main Street, the town eerily quiet except for the occasional bark of a distant dog. Caleb pushed gently against the diner's door, surprised when it gave way with a creak. Inside, the familiar scent of old wood and something faintly sweet lingered, as though time itself had been trapped within the walls. Dust particles danced in the dim light filtering through the blinds. The red vinyl booths were faded, some torn. At the seams, a forgotten napkin dispenser sat on the counter next to an empty sugar jar, and high above it all, mounted firmly on the wall, was the old clock, its hands still stubbornly frozen at 7:15. Caleb stood quietly, letting the stillness settle over him. Eli wandered over to the jukebox in the corner, tapping its glass face. "Think it still works?" Eli asked. Caleb shook his head. "Hasn't played a tune in years." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The diner wasn't just a building, it was a relic of who they used to be, a place where birthdays were celebrated, proposals whispered over coffee, neighbors gathered without needing a reason. Caleb walked toward the counter, absently running his fingers over the worn formica surface. He remembered his first date with Eli's mother here. Her laughter, the way she'd ordered pancakes at midnight, claiming breakfast always tasted better when it wasn't morning. A soft voice startled him from his thoughts. "You two sure know how to sneak into places." He turned sharply to see Marina standing just inside the doorway, a faint smile on her lips. She leaned against the frame, her arms crossed loosely, the light from outside outlining her silhouette. Eli beamed. "We're not sneaking. Dad's just showing me around." Marina glanced around, her expression softening. "I used to sit right there," she said, pointing to a booth near the window. "My grandmother would bring me here every Sunday after church." Her voice trailed off, and for a fleeting moment, Caleb caught a glimpse of something fragile beneath her calm exterior. "You're from here?" he asked carefully. Marina hesitated, then nodded. "Long time ago, summers mostly." She wandered deeper into the diner, brushing her fingers along the counter, eyes tracing the space like someone reacquainting themselves with an old friend. "Feels smaller now," she murmured. Caleb watched her, sensing there was more she wasn't saying. "Town's changed," he admitted. "A lot of folks left. Something stayed behind." Marina's gaze drifted up to the wall clock, her brow furrowing. "Always thought someone would fix that." Eli piped up, "Dad can fix anything." Marina smiled faintly, but her eyes remained on the clock. "Maybe some things aren't meant to be fixed." The words lingered, heavy and unresolved. Caleb cleared his throat, searching for something to break the tension. "We were about to head home. You hungry? Thompson's grocery has sandwiches, like I mentioned earlier." Marina shook her head, her smile tinged with something wistful. "Not tonight, but thanks." As she turned to leave, Eli called after her. "Hey, maybe next time you can show us your favorite pancake recipe." Marina paused, glancing back. For a split second, something unspoken flickered in her eyes, a mixture of nostalgia and longing. "Maybe next time," she replied softly. The door creaked closed behind her, leaving Caleb and Eli standing amidst the quiet echoes of the past. Caleb sighed, resting a hand on Eli's shoulder. "Come on, kiddo. Let's get home." They stepped back out into beige, the cooling evening, the neon sign buzzing faintly overhead. Caleb looked once more at the diner's front window, catching sight of the clock inside, frozen against the growing darkness. Something about the way Marina had stood there, her hand, trailing the counter like a woman balancing between worlds, stayed with him long after they left. The next morning rolled in crisp and bright, sunlight slanting through Caleb Foster's kitchen window as he flipped pancakes on the old griddle. Eli sat at the table, swinging his legs, chin propped in his hands. "Dad," Eli asked, "do you think Marina really knows how to make pancakes like Grandma used to?" Caleb glanced over, hiding a smile. "She might, but I don't think anyone can beat Grandma's secret recipe." Eli shrugged, unconvinced. "Maybe we could invite her next time. You know, show her how it's done." Caleb raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Eli's curiosity about Marina wasn't surprising. The woman had a way of lingering in people's thoughts, like a melody you couldn't quite place but couldn't forget. Later that day, Caleb returned to the garage, tools in hand, routine settling around him like a second skin. But as noon approached, a familiar sound caught his attention, the low rumble of a Chevy engine. He looked up to see Marina's red Impala pulling into the lot once more. She stepped out, carrying a paper bag, her expression softer than before. "Morning," she greeted, lifting the bag. "I brought something." Caleb wiped his hands and met her halfway. "That's so." She handed him the bag, and he peeked inside to find fresh blueberries and a carton of eggs. "Thought maybe Eli might want to help me try out an old recipe," Marina said almost shyly. "From the diner, back when pancakes were more than just a breakfast." Caleb studied her face, noting the guarded vulnerability beneath her casual tone. After a pause, he nodded. "Eli'll be thrilled." Within the hour, they gathered in Caleb's kitchen, the room filled with the warm scent of batter and berries. Eli stood on a stool beside Marina, concentrating fiercely as she showed him how to fold ingredients carefully. "Not too fast," Marina coached gently, her hands guiding his. Pancakes need a little patience, Eli grinned. Dad says that about fixing cars, too. Caleb leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching them work. It had been a long time since the house felt this alive, laughter and conversation bouncing off the walls like sunlight. Once the pancakes hit the griddle, Marina glanced at Caleb. "You ever think about fixing up the diner?" The question caught him off guard. "It's not mine to fix," he replied, trying to sound neutral. She nodded thoughtfully but didn't push further. Instead, she turned back to Eli, flipping the first golden pancake expertly. When they finally sat down to eat, the table felt almost like something out of the past, a slice of normalcy Caleb hadn't realized he missed. Between bites, Marina casually asked, "What happened to it? The diner, I mean." Caleb chewed slowly before answering. "Mrs. Calloway passed a few years back. Place closed not long after. Town's quieter without it." Marina's fork paused midway to her mouth. "My grandmother," she murmured, almost to herself. Caleb blinked, setting his own fork down. "You're related to her?" She gave a small nod, gaze fixed on her plate. "Her daughter was my mother. I spent summers here growing up, but after she passed, well, life pulled me elsewhere." There was a weight in her voice that Caleb recognized, the quiet ache of unfinished business, of roots untended. "You ever think about reopening it?" he asked gently. Her eyes flicked to his, uncertain. "I don't know. Places like this. Town, people move on. Not sure anyone remembers." Caleb's voice was steady. "Some of us do." The moment hung between them, unspoken questions filling the silence. Before either could say more, Eli chimed in brightly, licking syrup off his fingers. "If you fix up the diner, I'll help. Dad, too. He can fix anything." Caleb chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. "Careful making promises on my behalf." But Marina smiled, something flickering behind her guarded eyes, a mixture of nostalgia and possibility. They finished breakfast, clearing plates together. Marina lingered by the sink, hands resting lightly on the counter. "Thank you," she said softly, looking at Caleb, though the words felt like they carried more than just gratitude for pancakes. He nodded, wiping his hands dry. "Anytime." Before she left, she glanced once more toward the diner's direction. "Maybe I'll stop by there later," she said, voice almost casual. "See if it still feels the same." Caleb watched as she walked back to her car, something in his chest tightening without explanation. As her Chevy pulled away, Eli tugged at his sleeve. "Dad," Eli whispered, voice earnest. "I think she belongs here." Caleb didn't answer right away. He stared down Main Street where the old diner stood in the distance. Its faded walls, the flickering neon, the silent clock stuck at 7:15. "Maybe," he finally murmured, almost to himself. "Maybe we all do." The following week passed in the steady rhythm of small-town life. Garage doors creaking open at dawn, the clang of wrenches, and the occasional hum of a passing pickup truck. Caleb Foster had grown used to the quiet predictability. It kept his worries at bay, like oil coating the gears of a machine running on borrowed time. But even Caleb couldn't ignore the envelope that arrived in Thursday's mail, stamped with bold red letters, "Final Notice." He sat at the kitchen table that evening, staring at the numbers scrawled across the paper. Eli had gone to bed, the house silent except for the faint ticking of the old wall clock he'd salvaged years ago, its hands faithfully moving, unlike the one in the diner. A low sigh escaped him. The garage mortgage, overdue. Repairs long deferred. Business trickling away. He folded the letter, tucking it under a stack of bills, as if hiding it might lessen its weight. The next morning, as Caleb adjusted the hood of an old Ford truck in his garage, the sleek purr of an unfamiliar car rolled onto the lot. He wiped his hands, brow furrowed, as a polished black sedan came to a stop. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Victor Langston, impeccably dressed, hair silvered at the edges, eyes sharp like a man who'd seen too many ledgers and a few front porches. "Caleb Foster," Victor greeted smoothly, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Heard you're still keeping this old place afloat." Caleb straightened, wary. "What can I do for you, Mr. Langston?" Victor glanced around the aging garage, lips twitching faintly. "You've done good work here, but times are changing, Caleb. I'm offering to buy you out, clear your debts, give you a clean slate." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Not looking to sell." Victor's gaze didn't waver. "You're a practical man. Can't be easy raising a boy running a place like this. Think what you could do without that burden." The words lingered, cutting sharper than intended. Before Caleb could respond, a familiar red Chevy pulled into view. Marina stepped out, giving Victor a brief glance before walking toward them, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Everything all right?" she asked, sensing the tension. Victor's smile widened, oozing charm. "Just a friendly offer." Caleb's voice was steady, but edged. "Not interested." Victor tipped his head, slipping a business card from his jacket. "Keep it anyway. Think it over." He turned, walking back to his car without waiting for further conversation. Marina watched him go, then looked at Caleb, concern flickering in her eyes. "What was that about?" Caleb exhaled, wiping grease from his palms. "Langston's got plans to buy up half the town. Thinks my garage is next." She studied him, quiet for a moment. "Is he right?" Caleb met her gaze, something raw beneath. His calm exterior. "I've managed fine so far." But even as he said it, the weight of that envelope burned at the back of his mind. Later that afternoon, Marina lingered by the garage's open bay, watching Caleb work. Eli sat cross-legged nearby, sketching something in a notebook, likely another invention involving wrenches and duct tape. Marina hesitated, then approached Caleb as he wiped down a tool. "I could help," she said softly, almost tentative. "Financially, I mean." Caleb's hands stilled. He didn't look at her right away. "I appreciate it," he replied, voice quiet. "But I don't take handouts." Her brow furrowed. "It's not charity." He offered her a small, tight smile. "Maybe not to you, but it feels that way to me." She wanted to say more, to push past whatever wall he'd built. But she could see it in his posture, the set of his shoulders, pride carefully stitched into every word. So instead, Marina nodded, stepping back. "All right, offer stands." That evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, Marina found herself wandering down Main Street alone. The town felt hushed, paused between what it had been and what it might become. Her steps slowed as she reached Calloway's diner. The neon sign buzzed faintly, flickering against the growing twilight. Inside, dust clung to every surface, chairs stacked neatly as if waiting for customers who never arrived. She pushed open the door, the familiar creak echoing in the empty space. The same booths, the same worn counter, and there, above it all, hung the diner's clock, frozen at 7:15, unmoved by the years slipping past. Marina traced a finger along the counter's edge, the silence pressing against her. She could feel her grandmother here, in the scent of syrup still lingering faintly, in the laughter the walls seemed reluctant to forget, and beneath it all, a quiet question tugging at her. What would it take to bring it back to life? The town wasn't lost. Not yet, and maybe, just maybe, neither was she. The scent of sawdust and old wood filled the air as Caleb set down his toolbox outside Calloway's diner. He glanced up at the faded neon sign, its flickering letters struggling to glow against the midday sun. The diner looked tired, but not. Beyond saving. Ready to give her a little life? Marina's voice rang from behind. Caleb turned to see her standing there, sleeves rolled up, determination etched into her features. She held a broom in one hand and a dustpan in the other, as if she'd already made up her mind. Eli trailed close behind her, arms loaded with a bucket of rags and a spray bottle. "Dad, I told Marina you